Patch 6.18 notes review. Yeah, so I didn't do a patch notes review for the last patch, and the main reason that I skipped it was that I wasn't very interested in the game at that point in time. I was looking at the possibility of maybe moving into some other type of content, but mainly what I'm probably going to do right now is adding more gameplay footage to the channel. I'll keep doing these patch notes reviews just because I really enjoy doing them, and for the few people that do watch them, I really appreciate that, and I hope that you do enjoy them. So, we'll get right into it. This is going to be the Worlds patch, and there's some important considerations with the way the meta's been shaping up, especially for pro play. I think that them buffing Gnar was kind of out of place. I think they wanted to get like a feeler on him. They wanted to see him more often, but maybe not quite at the level that he came to prominence. Yorick is actually not going to be in the Worlds tournament because he's going to be released on this patch. So they're not going to make the same mistake as last Worlds with Mordekaiser and all that. So that's really good. I haven't looked at Yorick's kit too much other than the champion preview that I saw, and he looked really good actually. But I'm not going to comment on him too much until I've had a chance to play him myself. And once he's been out for a while, maybe he'll become picked more often. We'll have to see. So this Ashe nerf, it's kind of at a time when she's almost falling back out of meta anyway, especially with when we're getting closer to the assassin rework. So I want to say this is purely like for worlds balance. They're not as concerned with solo queue. She's still going to be a pretty good champ for solo queue, but mainly they're saying that her access to cooldown reduction is something that AD carry class never had when her W cooldown was set to 4 seconds at max rank. So Ashe for a long time has always maxed W, so that means that she will probably, with Essence Reaver, she's going to be at 4 second volley by the time, by level 10, guaranteed every time. So right around level 7 or 8 is when you can expect that. But right around rank 2, rank 3, you're already 2 seconds behind the old ranking, so it is quite a bit more punishing during the laning phase. So I think that they kind of missed the mark here. I would have liked to see it stick somewhere around where it was, like 12, 10, 8, and then maybe like 6 and then 5. But instead they chose to add a couple of seconds at each rank, which I don't really agree with. Since she functions off of her W cooldown. It's majority of her poke damage, especially in lane. You don't really walk up to people as Ashe unless you've got your Q charged, which also is not the most reliable damage in lane. So once you remove a portion of her damage for the laning phase, you make it a lot harder to justify picking her, and I think this is not really enough to force her out of competitive play, but it might be enough to force her like down a tier in solo queue. And whenever Ashe isn't top tier, then she's simply not picked. So might see a little bit less of her. And to touch on competitive again, the teams that value her for utility, they're still going to pick her, but the hard carry 80 carries, they're not going to like this nerf because they like lots of damage. So Very aggressive ADs will probably move on to different champions, and the more utility ADs will probably still play here a little bit. That's what I think, at least right now. Some weird bug fix for Aurelion Sol. I don't really cover bug fixes very often unless it's going to drastically change the way champion is played. So this is just a visual bug, so we're going to skip that. Base AD down. This is basically to remove the option of Trinity Force that people have been opting for. Right when Echo was brand new, before Grasp of the Undying got nerfed a couple of times, it was Iceborne Gauntlet, which was so strong, and then after that got nerfed enough times, and then Grasp of the Undying got nerfed. People switched over for Verb Battle and Trinity Force instead of Grasp of the Undying and Iceborne Gauntlet, because that's just a lot weaker than it used to be. Where do I think he'll go now? I think he might possibly go back to Grasp of the Undying, since he's going to be losing a little bit of base attack damage. 4 attack damage is quite a bit for a champion that doesn't actually build that much damage. He's going to have to build a lot of tank stats if he's in the top lane. I think this does kind of hurt AP Echo quite a bit, because he already relies on his Q to CS quite a bit, and he doesn't really have any reliable mechanisms for farming, so it might be necessary to run a few extra attack speed runes or AD runes possibly on Echo now, especially for AP. Maybe even going like Nashor's Toothfilled, which I want to say wouldn't be necessary on him because he's got access to so much cooldown reduction, but with him losing out a little bit of damage, it's not going to affect his ability to blow up multiple targets, but the 1v1 potential is going to be significantly lower, so I'd look for ways to shore that up. And it might be the case where Nashor's would be a dead-end build path, especially if you're behind, so I would only get that if you're really ahead. RW damage down, E cooldown up. We talked about this briefly at the start of the video, so the main thing is that Hyper already did pretty good damage, his W, so that was pretty much dumb, and instead of just reverting this, they're actually nerfing his E as well, because they don't like how mobile he is in lane. And this is something I'm really excited for. We've got Lee Sin buffs. People have said that his jungle sustain is really good in the past, and it was until it wasn't, and then people that think they know what they're talking about have said that his sustain is fine, which is pretty good. It's alright, but now it's going to be better. Their main focus, their main reasoning for doing this, obviously, so that Lee's going to be picked more at Worlds. Similar changes are going to be had with Nocturne as well. He's getting, what is it? His fear duration is going up by a quarter of a second at all ranks, so that is actually quite a big deal. It's the difference between standing behind someone and standing right next to them. But this is going to be good. The main thing that's going to help Lee Sin do is sustain in the mid game when he's farming and he's trying to gank and then he's farming. So a lot of the times he's removed, his ability to get in the fight is removed because he's not that tanky that early in the game, and he just simply would have low health, where someone like Volibear or Eve that would be more tanky has more tools at their disposal. Lissandra health per level down. This is actually interesting to me because losing 9 health on your health per level stat that comes out to like um what is that, 90, about 162 health or something like that at level 18. So that makes me wonder, would someone just replace that lost health with some health per level seals? And I don't think that it would actually be that bad. But inevitably that would lower her durability, and like you might have to run a more specific setup on her now, because I don't think that she really functions as well with lower health. Maybe it won't do anything. I tend to think that it will, but um, particularly for mid lane, this will be a big change because it changes matchups for mid lane a lot. But if you're taking teleport and you're just farming top lane the whole game, then this isn't going to affect you quite as much. Especially in mid lane where you get levels quicker, potentially, then you would see the difference a lot more early game. By level 3, this would already be 27 less health than what you'd be used to. Of course, that's not really that much. It's the difference between living and dying sometimes, though. So, all the little bit matters. That's 27 less health that she has. But the difference is that from where she was before, it's more like losing 50 health in a way, if you want to look at it like that. So, Glitterland's slow duration was supposed to be buffed already, and the buff never actually made it. I'm not sure how much she's going to be picked for solo queue again, but this is a world's focus patch, and this is probably going to make her a really solid pick in Juggernaut compositions. So Lux is kind of a counter to Lulu, so in some ways at least you can force out her ultimate with your ultimate in combo. But mainly she just can keep her tracks down, and this E-buff for Lux is going to be pretty substantial. I really don't think she's going to be picked that much at Worlds, not even as a counter, just because I happen to know that matchup. I guess it really depends on how Lulu plays it at level 1. Because if she gets shield and you can just poke out Lux with Thunder Lords, and really depends on how they spec. But Lulu will be really good for Juggernaut. I'm trying to think of champions that will be contested. Ashe will probably not be as contested at all. She's like a firm backup pick now, I want to say. Echo is probably going to be pretty close to the same for competitive. He already has really favorable trade patterns. It's similar to Riven, to where they can just go in on you and they actually get a free trade off most of the time. Riven with her knockup and stun, and Echo with his shield and his stun. So they have ways of opting into trades, and even with lower damage, he's still going to win those trades. This has an interesting effect for competitive. Gnar was probably one of the most highly contested picks after his buff, and it's pretty much only lasted for one patch. But I think that since he was picked recently, pros have a tendency to kind of fall back on champions they've been playing recently. So just since people have been picking him back up, he's probably going to be seen at Worlds a fair bit. We got to remember that they're still going to have a couple of weeks to play in this patch. It's going to have some time to grow, and in particular, the Talia buff, or the Talia nerf, sorry, is probably going to be the thing that changes competitive the most. I expect Rise to kind of be picked up in competitive in certain ways. I've had pretty good success with him at mid, but I think he's more of a top laner in this competitive meta. Maybe his matchups are just really bad, though. I'm not sure. Whenever I've played him, it's been really face roll. If I have a team behind me, then it's just really good. The main problem that I've had is people don't know how to work Rise's ult. So maybe in like another year, people will know how to use Rise ult, and I'll start playing him again. But until people understand how to use Rise ult, he's going to be pretty bad in solo queue. But this has the potential to be one of the most highly contested picks at Worlds based on this AoE teleport. Or it could just be a pocket pick for some people, or even a cheese strategy, if you will, for certain teams that want to put in the time to work with Rise. But basically the changes here were to make range indicator match up with what the actual values were, since his rank 1 ultimate got buffed last patch or something like that. So again, I think this is going to have a big impact on solo queue more than anything for the Lux mains. It'll be a little bit more annoying, and they may have a reason to pick her now. It's going to be really good for Lux to be strong heading into Assassin patches, because Assassins typically have a really good time dealing with Lux, and if she's strong, then some of her counters are allowed to function as well. But more importantly, it makes it more of a 50-50 matchup against Assassins, where it shouldn't be the case that Assassins just win 70% of the time against Lux, where maybe that's what it is about right now. For example, if you have Fizz against Lux, there's just really not a lot she can do. That's a really bad matchup for her. But moving on, Miss Fortune passive does full damage to turrets, so this is kind of similar to the Vayne change that they had a while back. They don't want these champions to be limited by their inability to take towers. They're not an intended weakness, so they're buffing up their ability to take towers a little bit. And with Miss Fortune, it happens to be through her passive. There's a little bug fix in there too. It's not going to affect gameplay very much. We already talked about this a little bit. This is the quarter of a second extra duration on all ranks of fear, so you're still probably max Q, or at least put 2 or 3 points in the Q before you max your E. And kind of interested with Spell Shield max after you get Unspeakable Horror maxed out. I'll have to play around with that and maybe release some gameplay videos with Nocturne. Base armor and armor per level down for Rek'Sai. This is going to be pretty decent hit. But at the end of the day, mid to late game Rek'Sai is still going to be the exact same. This is mainly a nerf. Seems like it's focused at early game. But again, that is a loss of scaling 0.3. At level 18, that's only like, 3 armor, something like that, 2.4 armor. And then losing just like 4.3 armor right off the bat. So 4 armor is more impactful than 7 armor late game. So if you want to look at it like that, basically just an early game nerf, not too much to worry about for the late game. It's going to be basically the same thing. Shen passive shield and Q damage decreased. I think he was winning a few too many matchups and not having enough of a trade-off for when he would use his ult. So they're looking for ways to make him less of a free ultimate. And now there'll be probably a significant trade off for him leaving lane because he won't be able to come back in and dominate as well as he was. This nerf for Talia is going to impact her roaming ability quite a bit. I think this is probably over nerfing the champion, and it might even make it so she's not picked at Worlds at all. The damage was probably fine for her E. Honestly, it's such a good spell that I think it'd be fine if it did no damage, but her wave clear is one of the things that people kind of identified with, I want to say. And since she's not going to be as useful in wave clear, she'll probably still be picked some at Worlds, but probably not at the rate you would have expected if they didn't nerf her. Q's empowered heal down, E cooldown up, but cost less. So they're just kind of trimming some power from Vladimir, 25 base HP, and they're making it so he can't heal up off of the minions after a trade so easily. So his heal values are going down. His damage on the E will go down, but his health cost will also go down. This is the Yasuo tank nerf. Most of these changes are focused on removing the tank build from viability for the most part, and making it so that he has to build crit in order to get benefit from his ultimate's bonus armor penetration, as this now only applies to Yasuo's critical strikes. But at the same time, you won't necessarily still have to go full damage. You can still go like pretty tanky. And it's worth to note that they increased his base attack speed, so that means that attack speed is more valuable on him now. Because of the way that attack speed works, let's say you're getting 40% attack speed from Phantom Dancer or something like that, that multiplier is based on this value. So he's losing a little bit of attack speed growth per level, but your base attack speed is a pretty important consideration for all of the other attack speed, because if I remember correctly, base attack speed is or attack speed per level is not counted in your base attack speed. But Frozen Mallet down to 30 attack damage, and they're giving it 50 health, so that's not really the greatest trade-off. They also changed the build path around, which I don't really understand why it ever had a pickaxe in the recipe. So now it's back to Jorm's Fist, Giant Spell, and 900 gold, which that's fine. It's pretty much where the item belongs, and being able to pick that up as kind of like a hex drinker sort of, you know, bruiser-ish item that does a lot of damage and has that passive, that was just a little bit too much. Gave a little bit too much stats for the gold, so they're just nerfing it down. Spoils of War passive heals for less. That's interesting. That's probably going to stop most supports from tanking the first couple of shots, and then going to lane and healing up off Relic if they're helping their jungler out. So leashing potential will go down. And this makes champions that don't go Relic Shield a little bit better, just because this is nerfed by comparison. So anytime you're against a Relic Shield champion, they'll just be like a little bit weaker compared to what they could have been pre-nerf. It's pretty obvious, but sometimes you just need to take a second and, you know, internalize the changes. Because again, like I was talking about with the Lissandra health nerf, this may only be 5 less health, but that's 5 less health over however many times you're going to be proccing that. It could be like, I don't know, maybe 15 health over like 2 minutes, something like that. 15 to 20 health over 2 minutes, and these advantages will stack up. Like, let's say, what if they're able to have an extra potion because of some mastery that they went, and now that setup is going to be incrementally better than Relic Shield and another setup. So, whenever you're considering your theory craft, you always want to consider your masteries and runes together because the stats all come out the same in game. So if you have a really good reason to go for a keystone, then that's pretty much how you're going to want to figure out your strategy for whatever it is you want to do. That wasn't the point. The point is that I'm going to be doing more mastery videos. Preseason is coming. There will be more content, and thanks for hanging in there and not unsubscribing like constantly. Baker Pantheon looks tight. Alright, I'm out.